Hayato is a lonely loser who is on track to die a worthless virgin. However, his life changes when he takes over his grandmother's cafe, only to discover she set up a harem for him to clap multiple baddies. After 3 years of being away, Hayato finally returns from university to his grandmother's cave called Cafe Terrace Familia, after hearing that his grandmother passed away. He expects the cafe to be empty as it looks like a scene from a horror movie, and walks into the cafe, planning how he'll tear it down so he can make a profit from selling the place, only to hear a bunch of girls talking in the room next door to where he is seated. Suddenly, a hottie barges into the room wearing only her underwear. As it's the virgin's first time seeing a girl almost naked, he almost gets a heart attack and rushes to the next room while she is screaming, only to meet Emi in her extra suit. To show how cultured he is, he grabs the panties from her hands while running away, and he's shocked to meet 3 half-naked chicks in the other rooms. Before he can explain himself, the girls chase after him, thinking he's a burglar, and Ami knocks him out. Later on, after clearing things up with the girls, they apologize to him, but leave him tied up because he saw their OnlyFans content without subscribing.
You're broke!
Then, they explain to Hayato that they knew his grandmother, telling him that she let them stay with her, and that after a while, they grew fond of her to the point of considering her as family. When the girls tell Hayato to go back to Tokyo, he gets pissed at them. However, the girls tell him that they have the right to live in the house as they took care of his grandmother, whom he abandoned. To stand his ground as the owner of the house, he insists that they leave, explaining that he left his grandma because he got into a fight with her. Later on at the beach, after hearing of Hayato's plan to convert the cafe into a parking lot, the girls are worried as they don't have enough money to move out, and if he takes down the cafe, it will disrupt the concert they had been planning. So they decide to change his mind using their feminine charms. While Hayato is in his room thinking about the past, Oka walks into the room dressed as a maid, telling him to have dinner with them, but he finds her act of kindness suspicious, mentioning that his decision about the cafe is final, and that he offers to pay her the dinner. On getting to the dinner table, they see she does a poor job at cooking dinner, presenting burnt offerings garnished with veggies at the dinner table, which only makes Hayato call her stupid, instead of changing his mind as she intended. Up next, they signal Omni to step in, seeing that their first attempt has failed, and she shows up in a Hooter girl outfit, feeling confident that she has him in her palm. Then she invites him out on a date, however, she is shocked as he turns her down. Later on, while the girls have dinner together, Hayato isolates himself, preferring to have a snack over the meal they prepared, and then Riho informs him that the bath is ready for him. As he sits in the bath, Hayato feels uneasy, expecting the girls to have pulled some kind of trick on him. But he completes his bath without any incidents, and as he heads back to his room, he sees the cafe door open. Upon entering cafe, he sees a Kane seated at one of the tables with a pack of cigarette-shaped chocolates, which he assumes are real cigarettes. So he gets pissed at her and scolds her because smoking is prohibited at the cafe. But she offers him one of the chocolates, explaining that she frequently comes there to write songs for her band. She also mocks him for telling her to follow the rules of a shop that he wants to demolish, causing him to walk out of the cafe feeling embarrassed. Meanwhile, in Shirajuku's room, Ryo gets her drunk, knowing that she turns into an adult movie actor when given alcohol. Then she sends her to Hayato's room while he's asleep, planning to blackmail him with the video she'll get of him banging her. Immediately, Shirajuku arrives at Hayato's room. She starts taking off her clothes, showing off her huge melons and rice cakes.
Yeah, boy.
Then she pins Hayato on the bed so she can make a baby with him. But before she can finally end his virgin streak, Ami shows up, who assumes that Hayato is at fault and proceeds to whip his butt. The next morning, as Shirajuku prepares breakfast for Hayato, he finds out that she doesn't remember what happened the previous night, while Ami apologizes to him, after being scolded by Riho for ruining her plan. Just then, they are visited by some men who are interested in buying the cafe, and it becomes clear to the girls that Hayato is dead serious about selling the place. However, he starts having second thoughts about going through with the sale, when one of the buyers tries tossing out the sign of the cafe. As the girls realize that he may still have the desire to run the cafe, they decide to send Oka to meet him with his favorite meal and persuade him. At first, he denies the food, and before leaving the room, she tells him that his grandmother told her to prepare that dish for him if anything happened to her. After having a taste of the meal, he remembers the struggles his grandmother went through to keep the cafe running, and Oka overhears him as he expresses his sadness about not getting revenge on the people who looked down on his grandma before she died. Afterwards, while Hayato is in the kitchen, Oka meets up with him, telling him that she is happy to know that he ate the meal, and then he asks her what his grandmother was like before she died. So she tells him that she died in her sleep after a happy meal together with the girls, and he happily smiles, telling her that he is glad that she died happy, rizzing up Oka in the process. Later on, as he meets up with the girls, Hayato informs them of his decision to take a year off from university to run the cafe, and that he plans on returning if he doesn't get a positive outcome. Then he gives in to his inner simp as he announces to them that he wants to live with the girls in the house. However, Oka kicks against the idea, but she is outvoted by the other girls. The following day, after the girls introduce themselves properly to Hayato, he assigns chores to everyone, but he gets frustrated as he finds out that they are lazy bums. When they tell him that his grandmother had done most of the chores for them, basically treating them like teenage toddlers, he wonders if they worked her to death, but they explain that they helped out with the cafe, and then demand that he pay them wages to do the chores, but he turns down the request. As Owen seems to step up to do the chores, Shirajuku offers to handle all the chores, but Hayato turns down her offer, stating that he won't accept everyone dumping all the work on her, because she is a spineless pushover. Then he orders everyone to clean up the house. As they carry out their assigned chores, Hayato supervises them, making sure they don't slack off. Then he meets Oka scrubbing the stairs, and when he bosses her about, she tells him to buzz off. Before he can leave to do some laundry, his culture radar spots Oka's panties, and Riho snitches on him while he is staring at it. As she tries to cover up herself, she slips and goes flying at Hayato, but the gods of Ekshia fail him as she treats his face like a doormat, knocking him out. Later on, he ends up cleaning the cafe by himself as the girls are angry at him for making a collection out of their underwear while doing the laundry. And then he meets Shirajuku there. As she thanks him for standing up for her earlier by splitting the chores for everyone, he plays it cool, saying that she shouldn't be so formal with him as their family. And then she informs him that dinner is ready, insisting that they have dinner together as a family to keep the promise they made to his grandmother. Later on, after having dinner with the girls, Hayato decides to take a bath. And once again, the gods of Ekchi do their thing as Oka walks in naked. However, he receives the blame, and Ami immediately shows up to make sure he's punished. The following day, while at the cafe, Hayato organizes a pre-opening event to practice serving customers, and invites the girls to service them. Although they doubt his ability to do a good job, he is confident that he'll prove them wrong, but he ends up being a true disappointment as the girls complain that his coffee tastes like shit, and then they taunt him when he sulks about his failure. Later that night, as he is pissed off by their comments about his coffee, he decides to practice making coffee at the cafe after dinner and meets Akane there. Then, she tells him to make a cup of coffee for her, but as he is still pissed that she talked trash about his coffee earlier, he challenges her to make a cup for him, acting like a jerk. After handing him the coffee, she walks out on him like a boss, not giving a damn if he drank it or not, and when he swallows her amazing coffee with his mountain-sized pride, he asks her to teach him how she made her coffee as he never got to learn from his grandmother. After hearing this, she decides to teach him without holding any grudge against him, because his grandmother told her already that he'll behave that way. The next day, Hayato drags Ryo to accompany him as he visits some of their business partners to inform them of their reopening. However, she assumes that he is simping over her and that he used the visit as a chance to go on a date with her. But he simply replies that the other girls aren't fit for such meetings, adding that he just wants her to give him directions to where he is going. Later on, while at the roasting plant, Ryo notices that Hayato has the social skills of an introvert as they talk with the owner, so she steps in to save the good relationship they have with the owner of the shop. As they visit the other partners, things go the same way, and after seeing the last partner, they finally head for a shrine. When they are done praying, Ryo goes into mommy mode, scolding Hayato for not showing proper respect to the partners, and he immediately accepts his faults without arguing, apologizing to her for how he behaved, which surprises her as he easily took her correction. While heading back to properly thank the partners, she decides to show him her panties as a reward for being a good boy, but he trips down the stairs while looking at her. After some days, Ryo realizes that Hayato seems to always butt heads with Oka, and she advises him to smoothen things out with her for the cafe environment to be comfortable enough for them to work. Later that day, while watching Oka do the laundry outside the house, Hayato takes Ryo's advice to heart as being a jerk to Oka in front of their female customers, making him canceled on Twitter, which would be bad for their sales, so he thinks of a way to get along with her, and Akane tells him to simply shower Oka with tons of compliments. Just then, Oka spots him and starts nagging him, telling him to get the cafe ready for opening if he has nothing to do, but Hayato tries complimenting her, grinning at her like he is held at gunpoint. However, she misinterprets his gesture as an indirect insult, and the two get into a fight. Later that night, when he arrives at Oka's room to pass on a message from Riho, he meets her trying on the cafe's maid uniform in her room, and starts mocking how she looks in it. However, he realizes that she is getting pissed, so he gives a very poor compliment to avoid getting into another fight with her. To his surprise, his plan seems to work as she feels happy that he complimented the uniforms, revealing that she made them, and then she acknowledges that he has improved at making coffee. The next day, as Hayato meets with the girls, he informs them that they'll be ready to open the cafe the following day, and they are hyped to hear the news, assuring him that it'll be a blast as he worries about the turnout. While talking, the girls notice that Amy seems to be bothered by something, but she brushes it off, and Hayato surprises them with their pay for the previous month. Later on, as Hayato relaxes at the beach, he expresses how relieved he is about getting along with the girls so quickly, only for Ami to show up and make it clear to him that his grandma laid the groundwork of their harem for him because she felt that she might not be there when he returned. After he thanks Ami for making him realize everything, thinking that she may not be a moron after all, she once again proves that she has just 2 brain cells as she rubs what she said in his face. When they get back to the house, Hayato finds his computer and phone in pieces, and Ami admits that she broke them, offering him her milk jugs for him to squeeze as stress balls.
Not gonna lie, that shit made me hard.
Instead, he decides that he wants to go all the way, chasing her around the house. The following day, which is opening day for the cafe, Hayato meets with the girls at the cafe to address them before customers start turning up. Then he encourages them to work hard and opens up the cafe for business. As they prepare to receive customers, Riho warns Hayato against losing his temper in case he meets a rude customer, telling him to just politely ask them to leave. And although the girls doubt that he'll keep cool, he promises to follow what they said. Soon after, customers begin to turn up, and everything seems to be going just fine, until an old fart walks in, stating that he never expected the cafe to reopen after Hayato's grandma passed away. Immediately, Hayato remembers that he was one of his grandmother's haters, and the old man takes a seat at one of the tables to order their most expensive coffee. While Hayato prepares his coffee, he asks if Hayato is related to the previous owner of the cafe and calls him over, bragging about saving his grandmother's business. Upon seeing this, the girls are nervous that Hayato might catch a case if the man keeps talking trash. But to their surprise, he thanks the old jerk and keeps his calm even when he is provoked by the man. Nevertheless, the man keeps on roasting his grandmother, provoking the girls to consider having murder charges. But before they can end him, Hayato stops them just in time. While Hayato apologizes to him, he gives off predator vibes as he attempts to rip off Shirajiku's uniform, calling it ugly. So Hayato restrains him, threatening to sue him if he doesn't leave, while the other customers rally around him and bully the man out of the cafe. It's been a week since the cafe reopened, and while working at the cafe, Hayato sees that the number of customers seems to be reducing every day. So Hayato worries that they'll run out of business soon, thinking of ways to improve sales. The following day, while having breakfast with the girls, he suggests that they set up a stall at the annual Cherry Blossom Festival, although some of the girls will have to stay back to run the cafe, and Shirajiku then proposes coming up with a new menu item. After this, Hayato assists her at the cafe to come up with the dish. However, he becomes worried as the meal she's proposing contains alcohol, which puts her in the mood to ride his pole. After a while, Rio decides to join them, asking to help them out, but Hayato tells her to buzz off as she'll just be a disturbance, and after he sees that she's about to blow her brains out, he tells her she'll be in charge of the cafe while they run the stall at the festival, to calm her down. After Riho leaves, Shirajiku tells Hayato how unbelievable it feels working with him in the cafe, talking like she knew him in the past. However, the dense loser thinks she's referring to what his grandmother told her about him, stating that he never thought he'd return to take over the cafe, then asks where she learned how to cook as her cooking was splendid. As she tells him the reason she got into cooking, she suddenly becomes intoxicated and starts taking off his clothes to develop plot.
Yes! 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 Yes!
But his hope of getting any action is crushed as Riho interrupts them,
No! No! No!
pulling him away from her. Later on, while talking with Hayato at the cafe, Akane finds out that they couldn't come up with a new menu item, and then she pulls out a springtime cookie recipe that she and his grandmother came up with, offering it to him. He then asks why she didn't bring it up earlier, and she replies that she didn't want to spoil his fun with the girls and hands it to him. The following day, Hayato, alongside Ami and Oka, sets up the stall at the festival, and some of their business partners visit their stall with gifts to wish them good luck, while Oka slacks off. After a while, she wakes up flustered, complaining that they should have woken her up sooner to gaslight them. Then she leaves for the restroom, and on her way back, she bumps into a bunch of ugly hoodlums. Meanwhile, after a calling to check up on the cafe, Hayato wonders why Oka hasn't returned to the stall and spots her being harassed, rushing to him for help. When he tells the men who are after her to find another girl to flirt with as Oka is one of his hoes, they refuse to back down and start making a scene. Just then, the other store owners step in, threatening to call the cops if they cause more trouble, and they are forced to leave. The day at the festival, as Hayato heads for the stall with the girls, they notice a crowd in front of their stall, so they rush to check what the fuss is all about, only to see that the stall has been trashed, and they figure out that the men from the previous day must have done it. To avoid causing problems for the rest of the stall owners, Hayato decides to close down the stall and then heads home with the girls. While walking home, Oka feels guilty for what happened, stating that her fat rice cakes brought the hoodlums to the stall, and she even fell asleep while they were setting up the stall. However, Hayato understands her reason for slacking off, stating that she had stayed up all night to work on the spring uniforms for the girls. He also reveals that he has a plan to make up for shutting down the stall and asks for her help in executing the plan. When they get back to the cafe, he whips out his grandmother's food card and tells them his plan to sell their coffee using the food card. Then he instructs Oka to post about their food cart on their social media pages and sends Ami on an errand to get supplies for the food cart. After setting up the food cart at a favorable location, the plan turns out to be a success as they get a ton of customers and make huge sales. Later that day, on their way home that evening, they're hijacked by the troublemakers, and Hayato confronts them to impress his hoes. Suddenly, one of the men uses his face as a punching bag, provoking Ami to retaliate using Liu Kang's flying kick to send one of the men flying. As she recovers from using up so much energy, another of the troublemakers attempts to hit her with a stick, but she counters him and knocks him out. Then, Hayato tells them that Oka is a million times scarier than Ami, and that her nickname is Mad Dog Oka, causing them to run with their tails between their legs. Relieved that they didn't get hurt, Hayato explains to Oka that he bluffed about her being a crazy bitch, so they don't come after them later, and states that he let them punch him to protect the cart that she worked hard to decorate, making her fall for his protective riddance. The following day, it's extremely busy at the cafe as Hayato's Cherry Festival promotion plan for the store worked perfectly, and Hayato, alongside Shirajuku, seems to have his hands full. Then suddenly, Ryo shows up like the FBI to help them out, although she already worked her shift the previous day. Later that night, while Hayato has dinner at the house with the girls, Akane tells Ryo not to overwork herself, but she assures them that she's fine. Then everyone heads to bed. Later that night, while going to the bathroom, Hayato sees that her lights are still on, so he decides to see if she's making her OnlyFans content, only to find her researching ways to improve the cafe on her computer, and he wonders why she's working so hard as a part-timer. In response, she explains that she wants to protect the cafe to show her gratitude for his grandmother saving her, and he advises her to ease up a little, but she starts going cuckoo, stating that no one is going to help her if she doesn't work so hard. Nonetheless, he talks some sanity into her, telling her to take life at her own pace and not to overthink things, as she won't last long if she keeps on stressing out. While Ryo is surprised by his response, he pats her on the head, promising to take care of her, then heads to bed, and she wonders if she can rely on him. The next day, while Hayato brainstorms ideas to further increase the cafe's profits with the girls during breakfast, Akane takes her leave, stating that she has some stuff to do as it's her day off. After this, Hayato asks the other girls what she is up to, so the girls tell it about the concerts she holds with her band and mention that they're not able to attend any of her shows because she doesn't let them. So he concludes that she's just embarrassed because her band's music must sound worse than a train's wheel scraping on its track. However, while heading back home from the convenience store, he overhears some girls talking about Akane's concert and decides to attend the show, only to find that it was amazing. After the show, Akane is surprised to bump into him on her way home, and becomes nervous when she finds out that he attended the show. However, he tells her he enjoyed the concert, promising not to tell the other girls as he sees her face turning into a tomato from embarrassment. Later on, while on the train back home, she explains to Hayato that she is too shy to invite the girls to her shows, stating that she was just in the band for fun and feels that everything she does has no meaning. After hearing this, he encourages her to believe in herself, expressing how moved he was by her song, and shows her a copy of her CD he'd purchased, which cheers her up. About a week later, while Hayato is out shopping for supplies, the girls hang out at the house, talking about the progress Hayato has made as a manager since he arrived, and their experiences together. Then, Akane seeks their opinion about changing her band's name to what Hayato suggested, and decides to keep the current name after seeing their reactions. As Riho raises the issue of their future together, asking what Hayato will do if the cafe keeps on going after a year, Shirajuku speculates that he'll hire new part-time workers as his harem disband, adding that he may get married. Then they all go quiet as they realize that they are his potential brides. However, all of them refuse the idea of marrying him except Ami, and the girls are surprised when the cool-headed Akane simps over him hard, jokingly saying that she wouldn't mind marrying him. The following day, as Riho walks into the house from her outing, she overhears Hayato talking with Shirajuku in the kitchen as he tells her that it's his first time doing it, and Shirajuku realizes that she'll handle everything, telling him to put it in before she makes happy noises and state that Hayato is huge. Upon hearing this, Riho assumes that they are working out, so she storms into the kitchen to join them, but she is disappointed to see them making sandwiches. Then she decides to join in, then gets jealous when she sees that Hayato is flustered as Shirajuku compliments him, and she gives him a compliment of her own which he responds to by patting her head instead, putting her in tsundere mode. After feeling embarrassed that she behaved like a dog seeking attention from its master, Shirajuku tells them to get started on making the sandwiches. However, while she shows Hayato how to prepare a sandwich, Riho becomes jealous as they treat her like a third wheel, and she starts a sandwich war with Shirajuku to see who can satisfy Hayato. As they present their sandwiches for Hayato to decide which is better, he pretends to have an upset stomach to avoid choosing between them and heads for his room. Later that night, while he has dinner with the girls, Riho and Shirajuku seem to be back to normal as they serve the girls the sandwiches they made earlier, and Hayato feels relieved. The following day, while Hayato organizes the cafe's accounts in his room, Oka complains to him about Ami's behavior, stating that she isn't acting like an energetic airhead as usual, and although he doesn't see a problem with her, Oka tells him to do something about it, worrying that she may be sick. Later on, as they clean up the cafe, Hayato is concerned about Ami's weird behavior, and Akane tells him that she recently lost a karate practice match. After hearing this, Hayato meets up with Ami at the house to confront her about her moodiness, asking her about the match she lost, so she explains to him that she went ahead to fight an opponent that was way stronger than her, even after her coach warned against it. After Hayato comforts her, stating that she should focus more on winning rather than learning techniques, she makes up her mind to train harder, reverting to being her usual self. The following day, while working at the cafe, Hayato finds it difficult to instruct the girls on what to do, as the cafe is packed full of customers, so he decides to get Riho to help him. However, when he meets her outside her room, she turns down his request, stating that he can't just boss her around all the time. So he decides to get help from Akane or Oka instead, forcing his way into Riho's room, who tries stopping him, only to see Akane and Oka getting set to film their adult content. And Oka smacks his face when he stares at them to save the mental image of their bodies. Then the girls refuse to help him too. At the end of the day, Hayato ends up cleaning up the cafe by himself, grumbling about the girls slacking off, but then he realizes that he's being selfish for relying on them too much, reminding himself of the fact that they aren't his real family. Later that night, on arriving at the house, he is welcomed by a congratulatory surprise party that the girls organized for him. And then they sit him down to tell him that he should depend on them as his family. As they celebrate, Akane sneaks outside to respond to a call from her mother and gets sad after the call. The next day, after the celebrations, everyone seems to take notice of Akane being super nice to them as she gives a lot of compliments to everyone and peacefully settles conflicts between them. After having dinner with the girls, Akane goes ahead to take a bath first, and the girls make comments about how less of a stuck-up bitch she has been recently, mentioning that she has become an important part of their family too. Later that evening, she meets up with Hayato at the cafe while he's practicing how to make coffee, and he confronts her about her overly nice attitude, asking her if she plans on quitting, which surprises her. She then confirms his suspicion, and he asks her if she'll be leaving the house soon, so she tells him that she'll be moving out by the weekend due to some family circumstances, mentioning how grateful she is to him, and grants him a free pass to go ham with her huge melons.
Yeah, baby!
But he fumbles his only chance to get in her pants. He also finds out that she has quit playing in her band as they talk and asks her to go on a date with him since she owes him. The following day, while on their date, Akane realizes that he tricked her into reviewing coffees with him at other cafes, and he takes it as a chance to discuss her departure without bugging the rest of the girls. However, when he asks her what's happening, she tells him that she doesn't have anything more to say, and then they head back to the house. Meanwhile, back at the house, the other girls go into a frenzy after finding out that Hayato is on a date with Akane, and Ami reveals that she overheard Akane talking about something important with Hayato. Later, on getting back to the cafe, Hayato asks Akane to make him a cup of coffee, promising to take note of the flavor as this may be his last time tasting her coffee, and she tells him how fun the year has been while staying with them. Then she asks him why he isn't being nosy about her moving back to her family home, to which he replies that he's respecting her privacy and decision to leave. After hearing this, she goes on to tell him about her reputable family that runs a trading business, stating that they're forcing her into an arranged marriage so she can carry on the company and become a baby-making factory. She also explains that she made a deal with them so she could be free to live how she wanted for that year, and that her time is up. Then suddenly, the other girls show up after overhearing their conversation, telling her not to leave as there's a lot of things they'd like to experience with her. As they talk, Akane tells them that she wants to stay with them, but she fears that her mother won't allow her and begs Hayato to do something about it. The next day, Akane's mother, who looks as cold as the North Pole, shows up at the cafe, and Akane, alongside Hayato, meets with her. After taking a seat at one of the tables, she asks Hayato why he arranged the meeting, and he hands the conversation over to Akane, saying that she has something to tell her. When Akane asks for more time before she comes home, her mom denies her request, calling her a loser who never completes anything she starts, and then shuns Akane when she tries to speak up for herself. Then her mother continues talking trash about her, but as Akane is about to apologize, Hayato steps in, telling her to grow some balls and that she should make her mother understand her decision to stay. When Akane is pissed that he hasn't spoken a word about what she wants to her mother, he tells her to stop being a spineless bitch and to take control of her life, stating that she should go home if she can't even look her mother in the eyes to say no. After hearing this, she snaps back to her senses, then offers to make a cup of coffee for her mother, and Hayato boasts of how skilled she is to her mother. Then, Akane serves her mom the coffee, stating that it represents her efforts throughout that year. And before she has a sip of the coffee, Hayato tells her that her heart has to be in it to realize how good the coffee tastes. After taking a sip of the coffee, her mother tells them about the time she had to quit the job she loved because she was told to inherit the family business, admitting that she had the wrong notion that Akane was a jobless screw-up who would be better off being forced down a similar path, and then she tells Akane to live as she the way she wants before leaving. Later that day, Akane meets Hayato sitting by the sea and thanks him for helping her find the courage to stand up for herself. However, he tries to act cool, mentioning that he was glad that things worked out as he'll be able to simp over her for a while longer. When she hugs him, pressing her huge melons against his back, he acts like an embarrassed 5-year-old. Then they head back home for dinner. The following day at breakfast, after handing the girls their pay for the month, Hayato holds a meeting with them to make an important announcement, but struggles to tell them what it's about. As the girls notice that he's being a wimp, they tell him to spit out whatever he has to say, and he tells them about his plan to open up a beach hut, requiring them to work throughout their summer break, which they agree to. Later that day, while Akane is out meeting with her band, Hayato hangs out with the girls in the house, and they wonder how he got the capital to set up the hut, so he tells them that he sunk a huge part of his revenue from his stocks to build it. When the girls suggest ways to promote the idea, Rio switches to her workaholic persona, proposing to redesign their webpage. But Hayato warns her not to go overboard, and then Oka shows up wearing the cafe's summer-style uniforms she designed, making Hayato's pole grow in size.
Yeah, baby!
Soon after, Rio changes into her swimsuit to Wanapoka, showing off her milk jugs to Hayato, and immediately, Akane walks into the room, meeting Hayato living the dream of every otaku as his harem fights over him. The following day, Rio drags Hayato to the cafe, asking him to take photos of the new item on the menu. However, he finds it difficult to get a good shot, only for Ami to photobomb the only good picture he has of it. Afterward, they head to the beach to take photos of the girls in their maid uniforms and end up having a good time playing around in the sea. The next day, they prepare to open the hut, and the girls show up wearing their cute summer uniforms. While Hayato feels glad to see that the hut is packed with customers, Rio goes into overdrive, refusing to take a break after working for hours. Later that day, while clearing out the tables, she spots Akane hitting on Hayato and decides to mark her territory, yelling at Akane to stop slacking off. As Hayato wonders why she's so uptight, he advises her to rest up, and while she goes on blabbering, she suddenly passes out from exhaustion. After a while, she wakes up to see Hayato seated beside her bed in her room, and she tells him that she feels guilty for being a nuisance and passing out on the first day of working at the hut. However, Hayato comforts her, stating that he is worried sick about her. She then apologizes to him, promising to be more careful, and then she tells him to stay with her while she rests.
Yeah, boy.
Later that day, after fully recovering her strength, Rio immediately returns to the hut, and before she starts working, she decides to thank Hayato for showing concern for her health, only to find him pulling babes as usual, so she becomes pissed, insulting him instead of thanking him as she intended. As she hops back into taking orders, Hayato notices that she is extremely sociable, and Shirajuku tells him that she doesn't talk much about herself, although she relates well with everyone. While Hayato advises Shirajuku to focus on finding permanent jobs that will improve her cooking skills, as she's already a third-year university student, Ami interrupts him to request permission to beat up some troublemakers who are bothering Rio, and he gives her the go-ahead to scare them off. When Rio thanks Ami for saving her, she tells Rio that Hayato sent her to protect her, and tells her that he was upset when she insulted him earlier, so Rio decides to apologize to him, feeling like his main squeeze, only to find more hoes around him, auditioning to be part of his harem, and she ends up insulting him again. The next day, which is their day off from work, the girls decide to visit the beach with Hayato. For the iconic beach episode, however, all the girls touch themselves at the beach.
What did he say?
Hayato isolates himself from them to go fishing at the docks, where he usually hangs out, and Akane meets him there to tell him about a love song she wrote for her next show, asking if he'd like to hear the lyrics. But they are interrupted by Ami, who tugs on his fishing line, pulling him into the ocean, and afterward the group heads home. The next day at the hut, which is packed full of customers once again, Hayato praises Rio's efforts in making it happen, but he is concerned that she is overworking herself again. Later on, he tells her to take a break for some time, threatening to fire her if she refuses, so she decides to have lunch with Shirajuku in the kitchen. When Shirajuku advises her to slow down her work pace as Hayato seems very worried about her, Rio tells her that she's just overexcited to be needed so much by someone. Meanwhile, a camera crew shows up at the hut, asking Hayato for permission to interview them for a news feature on beach huts, as their hut is gaining huge clout online because of Rio, and he agrees to it. Just then, Rio shows up, asking what the fuss is all about, and as the interviewer sees her, he recalls working with her on a variety show a long time ago when she was a child star. However, she doesn't seem to be as excited to meet him, telling him not to bring up the past, and she gets upset as most of the customers murmur about her past, causing her to run off. Later at night, she locks herself in her room, refusing to come out for dinner, and becomes depressed thinking about her past. Earlier on, the girls found out from the interviewer that Rio was a famous actor during her childhood days, but her career took a dive when her parents got divorced, causing her to disappear to the cafe as she thought no one would recognize her there. While the others are asleep, Hayato finds Rio sitting outside, and he tells her that he had the wrong idea of her as he thought that she was naturally sociable. But he realizes that it's a skill she picked up through hard work to get by in life. She then tells him about her daddy issues, and how she lost her fame along with her family when she was growing up, stating that her skills are useless. However, Hayato tells her that she is a vital part of the cafe and acknowledges her efforts behind the success of the cafe, thanking her for looking after his grandmother's cafe. Then he assures her that he will never stress her out. After he tells her how worried he is that she's overworking herself, she immediately starts crying oceans, telling Hayato to not dump her. However, he assures her that he'll always be there for her. The next morning, when Rio meets with the rest of the girls to discuss her past, they treat her like always and tell her that her past doesn't matter to them. Some days later, while closing up the hut for the day, Shirajuku spots Kika, Oka's twin sister, walk into the hut, but she mistakes her for Oka, asking her why she's coming over when they're about to close up. Just then, Ami runs up to her to show off her goofy glasses to them, but Kika scolds her, telling her to take her job seriously, causing Ami to be upset and run off like a hurt puppy. While everyone is shocked by what happened, Rio asks her if she's feeling angry. However, Hayato suspects that she's not one of his hoes. Meanwhile, back at the cafe, Ami runs into the cafe and meets Aoka there, surprising her. Soon after, Kika walks in, leading Ami to wonder if she's in the Matrix as she's seen two Okas. Later on, while at the house, Kika meets with the group to inform them that their parents sent her to check on Oka as she didn't visit home for the open holidays, and Oka reveals that she called home to notify them of her absence because of her busy job at the cafe. However, Kika expresses her disappointment as Oka dropped out of college to be a designer. Yet she ended up at a dead-end part-time job, and also says that she never imagined that she'd live in a harem house. When Rio tries to speak up to Kiku, she hurls insults at all of them, calling Hayato a manipulative boss who uses his power to get into girls' pants, and wagers that one of the girls has fallen for him already. However, Oka tells her to stop being rude, picking a fight with her. As Hayato gets tired of their bickering, he asks Kiku why she called them together, and she angrily throws every insult in the book at him, calling the girls dumb peasants. Immediately, Oka slaps her, telling her not to belittle her family or the cafe, and Kiku angrily runs out of the house. After this, Oka apologizes to the girls for her sister's rude comments about them, but they tell her that they're fine. Oka then tells them that her family has high expectations for her and her sister. However, she doesn't give a damn about their hopes for her, leaving her sister to live up to those expectations. She also says that she can't go back home as they'll just pester her, because they can't handle her life choices. The next day, while working at the hut, Rio sees that Aoka seems to be in a foul mood as she absent-mindedly bumps into a customer, dropping the tray of glasses in her hand, and the girls try to cheer her up while cleaning up the mess. Meanwhile, Kiku, who had seen everything that happened while spying on Oka, decides to head for the cafe to confront Ami after overhearing the girls asking Oka if she was upset by what Ami said. When she arrives at the cafe, she meets Ami feeling remorseful about upsetting Oka, so she decides to bail on her mission. Later at night, as Aoka relaxes in her room, she thinks back to when her sister and herself were close but started drifting apart when she told her parents her dream of becoming a fashion designer. Suddenly, Hayato walks into her room, snapping her back to reality, and he tells her that she feels bad for saying mean things to her sister. He also tells her that he spotted her sister at the hut earlier, who probably wants to make up with Oka too, saying that Kika was just checking up on her when she met with Hayato and the girls earlier that day. Then he advises her to talk with Kika to straighten things out with her, telling her to value her real family, and gives her the next day off to make up with her sister. The following day, before leaving the house, Oka tells the girls about her plan to make up with her sister, then bids them goodbye and heads out, only to find Kika standing in front of the house. After they stop by a bridge nearby to talk things out, Kika tells Aoka that she never gave up on her dreams because of her, mentioning that her parents have been worried sick about her ever since she moved out. Then she tells Aoka that she feels hurt that she never made a dress for her like she did for the girls. So Oka apologizes to her for neglecting her, settling things with her, and the two head back to the house. Later at night at the house, Oka meets Hayato to thank him for giving her a push to make up with her sister, and she wonders how he knew that Kika was her sister when he first saw her. So he tells her that he knows she wouldn't treat anyone she considers family as bad as Kika treated Ami. After he calls her the most caring amongst his hoes, she falls harder than a meteor for him. The following day, after having a nice time lighting fireworks with the girls, Hayato gets back to organizing the cafe's account books, and Akane brings him some coffee, telling him not to overwork himself, but he says that he has no other option as he is the store's owner, adding that things will get less stressful when the hut closes up by the end of summer. After expressing how sad she feels that the hut is about to close, Akane takes a look at his library, stating that he must know a lot of things, while Hayato stores a mental image of her exposed undies. Suddenly, she switches up the topic, asking if he knows that someone has feelings for him, and starts crawling towards him, showing her huge melons to him while asking if he's down to bone. However, Hayato holds onto his virginity. She then quotes a line from one of his books that's interpreted as a confession of love, and initially, he pretends to be dense about what it means, telling her that he's too busy with managing the cafe at the moment. But later, he responds with a quote from the same novel, and while she is heading to her room, she accepts the fact that his response to her confession has to be delayed for now. The following day, Hayato, alongside the girls, heads to a nearby bathhouse as their bathtubs are not functional and on their way, Akane stares jealously at Rio as she flirts with Hayato. As they arrive at the bathhouse, the girls talk about the times they came to the bath with Hayato's grandmother while changing, and then they enter the bath. While Ami touches Alka in her special place, Akane calls Rio to tell her something with a serious look. But she decides not to say anything and enters the bathtub. Meanwhile, in the men's section of the bath, Hayato is too much of a wimp to step into the hot bath like the other men, and because of this, they bully him, but then they give him props for having a huge rod, causing the girls' imaginations to run wild as they overhear the conversation from their side of the bath. Later on, the Wagashi shop owner asks the girls about their feelings towards Hayato, filling the air with an uncomfortable aura, and Akane directs the question to Rio, but she avoids giving a straight answer, then heads out of the bath. While touching herself, Rio ponders on her feelings towards Hayato, and soon after, Akane shows up to tell her that she has feelings for Hayato. After bath time, Hayato meets up with the girls in front of the bathhouse, and Akane offers to prepare some coffee for Hayato when they get back to the house just to annoy Rio. Before they can head out, Rio remembers that she has to visit the store to get breakfast supplies for the next day, and Hayato is forced to escort her, while Akane stares daggers at them as they walk away. Later on, as they walk back to the house, Rio seems absent-minded as she thinks about what Akane told her earlier. However, when Hayato asks about what's bugging her, she tells him she's fine. As they continue on their way, she goes nuts thinking about what his response to Akane's confession was, and desperately wants to know what she means to him, making her realize that she has feelings for him. As they get to the front of the house, she summons every bit of courage in her body to confess to him, but presents it as a hypothetical question, asking what he'd do if she confessed as she did, to which he replies that he would be happy.
Yes! Yes! Yes!
But he currently doesn't have time to think of things like that, as he has his hands full with running the cafe. After hearing this, Rio happily runs into the house as what he said gives her the hope of becoming his main hoe someday. Meanwhile, Akane becomes jealous as she overhears everything that happened. The following day, while closing up the cafe, Rio gets pissed when she spots Akane flirting with Hayato, and confronts her while Hayato makes his escape. Then she finally admits to Akane that she has feelings for Hayato, and Akane apologizes for provoking her, explaining that she wanted to get her to open up about her feelings. After this, the two end their fight and agree to a fair competition to be Hayato's only hoe. The next day, while Hayato holds a meeting with the girls, he suggests that they come up with a new menu item that's unique to the cafe, and initially the girls mock his idea. However, Akane starts a harem battle as she backs up his idea, provoking Rio to hop on his idea also, leaving the girls wondering what's going on between them. Later on, after the meeting, Hayato helps out Shirajuku in coming up with the new item at the cafe, but she gets pissed at him when he brings up the fact that she'll have to move out of the house eventually, even when she says she'll stay forever, and when she threatens to stop helping him, he apologizes to her. After they're done making the dish, Shirajuku comments on how fast summer went by and asks Hayato if anything romantic happened to him recently. As he tries to avoid the question, she suddenly confesses to him, claiming that she was the first to fall in love with him, but they could never go out because she knows that she'll end up making him sad someday. After hearing this, Hayato is shocked and tells her that everything seems too sudden. Immediately, she gets drunk, acting down bad as she undresses herself and tries to ride him. Later that day, after she has slept off the alcohol, Hayato accompanies Shirajuku to get some ingredients for the new item, and on their way, they bump into some of their business partners, whom Hayato asks for ideas for a dish idea as their dishes at the summer festival were tasty. As they give him some advice on the dish, they tell him that they learned dishes from his grandmother, almost revealing some information about his mother's past. So Shirajuku grabs him suddenly, then runs from them. Later on, when they stop by the beach, Hayato suspects that she is hiding something from him and confronts her about it. So she tells him about the time she visited the cafe with her dad, when she was little, to meet with his grandmother, a talented chef. She then narrates how she met him for the first time, and how he saved her from trouble at the time by standing up to a mean man she mistakenly spilled her food on. However, Hayato doesn't seem to remember having an encounter like that when he was little, asking why she didn't tell him about it earlier, and in response, she explains that when she came to learn how to cook from his grandmother, she made a promise to her not to tell him that she was a famous chef. Upon hearing this, Hayato figures out that his grandmother quit her job as a chef to take care of him. Later at night, Hayato sits at the cafe, expressing how guilty he feels after learning that his grandmother gave up her dream of opening up a restaurant in Spain to come back to Japan to take care of him as his parents had passed away. and that she didn't open up a big restaurant in Japan, so he won't find out that she abandoned her career to take care of him. When Shirajuku sees him at the cafe looking sad, she tells him that he shouldn't blame himself, but he tells her that she told him that she couldn't date him because if they got married, he would find out the secret because her father was his grandmother's student. As he is about to leave the cafe, she tells him that she asked his grandmother if she had any regrets after giving up on her passion as a chef, but she replied that none of it mattered as the time she spent with Hayato were the happiest years of her life, and even when she had little finances, she said that Hayato was the reason she was living. Touched by what she said, Hayato claims that she never told him about any of that. Then he thinks back to a time when he watched the cherry blossoms with his grandmother, and his mood brightens up as he realizes that his grandma showed him a lifetime's worth of love in the cafe, giving him more reason not to let the cave go out of business. Then, Shirajuku tells him that after his grandma died, she made up her mind to support him as his family if he ever returned to take over the cafe. And soon after, the girls barge into the cafe, promising that they'll support him while in tears, as they heard everything he discussed with Shirajuku. In the far future, a young girl walks into the house and sees a picture of the girls on the table. Then Hayato, who is now an old geezer, walks in. She then tells him that she's home, calling him daddy, and asks if the woman in the picture was her mother when she worked part-time at the cafe while pointing at the picture. After he confirms her statement, she asks him when he fell in love with her, but he goes around the question, stating that it was a long time ago. Do you think Hayato will end up saving the cafe with the girls, or would he go back to living his university life? Let us know if you want part 2 by commenting Drunk Shirajuku in the comments section below. Also, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. See you guys in the next video.